The twin suns of the planet Cyrix cast long shadows over the jagged, crystal-encrusted terrain. Amid the otherworldly landscape, a small figure stumbled through the alien wilderness. Barely 5 years old, a human child clutched a tattered blanket, their tear-streaked face streaked with dirt. Their ship had crashed days earlier, and they were the sole survivor, wandering in desperation and fear. In the distance, a Xyrian family moved through the shimmering forest, their movements graceful and deliberate. Xyrians were tall, with elongated limbs and smooth, glistening skin that shifted colors with their emotions. The family of 3, a pair of adults and their adolescent offspring, was gathering crystal fragments for their home when the youngest, Varel, froze mid-step. "Do you see that?" Varel's voice, melodic and curious, rippled through the group's shared telepathic connection. Both adults turned, their iridescent eyes narrowing as they focused on the child. The elder Xyrian, Salavak, moved forward cautiously. "A juvenile of the Terran species. What is it doing here?" The mother, Cleara, tilted her head, her color shifting to a soft green of concern. "It looks lost, and frightened." Before they could decide what to do, the child collapsed in exhaustion, their small frame crumpling onto the crystalline ground. Without hesitation, Cleara approached, her hands emitting a faint glow. She carefully lifted the unconscious child, her expression unreadable but her colors fluctuating between blue, compassion, and yellow, curiosity. The family returned to their home, a towering, bioluminescent structure grown from the living crystals of Cyrix. Inside, the atmosphere was calm and nurturing, filled with soft, ambient light and the hum of energy coursing through the walls. The child was placed on a soft, moss-like bed while Cleara administered a glowing elixir designed to aid healing. When the child stirred, their wide, terrified eyes met Cleara's. They recoiled slightly but were too weak to flee. Cleara's colors shifted to soothing pinks and greens, and she spoke softly in her harmonic language. The child didn't understand the words, but the tone was unmistakable. It was safe here. Salavak observed from a distance, his colors remaining a cautious orange. "Are we certain about this? Their kind is volatile." "They are young," Cleara countered gently. "They are unformed. Perhaps we can guide them." Varel, curious and bold, approached the bed and sat cross-legged on the floor. "What do you think it eats? Do they consume the crystal fruit like we do?" The child, still wary, muttered something faintly in their language, words the Xyrians couldn't decipher. But the tone was enough for Varel to pick up a soft sphere from the food tray and offer it. The child hesitated before accepting it, biting cautiously into the fruit-like substance. Their expression softened as the sweetness spread through their taste buds. "They like it!" Varel exclaimed, their colors flashing excited greens and yellows. Over the next few days, the Xyrians attempted to bridge the language gap. Using holographic projections and shared gestures, they introduced the child to basic Xyrian words. The child, quick and eager to learn, repeated them with growing confidence. Meanwhile, the Xyrians learned the child's name, Leo, and pieced together fragments of their tragic story through mimed gestures and simple drawings. Despite their initial fear, Leo began to adapt. They followed Varel into the forest, their small hands grasping crystal fragments, and mimicking the Xyrian way of collecting and organizing resources. Varel, fascinated by Leo's dexterity and problem-solving skills, often remarked on how quickly the human adapted. "They're clever," Varel said one evening as the family gathered around the bioluminescent hearth. "They learn faster than I do." Salavak, still cautious, remained on edge. "Cleverness is not always a gift. Terrans are known for their unpredictability." But Cleara, whose patience knew no bounds, saw something else in Leo. "Unpredictability is not always a flaw. It may be what allowed them to survive." Despite the progress, there were challenges. Leo struggled to adjust to Xyrian customs and frequently caused minor accidents. One evening, while attempting to help with a harvesting device, they accidentally triggered an energy surge that shattered part of the apparatus. Salavak's colors flashed red with frustration. "They are a danger to themselves and us," he said sharply. "Perhaps it would be better to return them to the humans." "And where are the humans?" Cleara replied, her voice calm but firm. "If we abandon them, they will die." Leo, who had been watching the exchange with wide eyes, stepped forward. They couldn't understand the words, but the tone was clear. Tears welled in their eyes, and they muttered something in their broken attempt at Zirian. "Sorry, Fix?" The attempt to communicate stopped Salavak mid-sentence. His colors shifted to pale yellow, a shade of reluctant understanding. "Perhaps," he said after a moment, "they are worth the effort." From that moment, the Zirians began to see Leo not as a burden, but as a part of their family. The child's determination to prove themselves and their ability to adapt won over even Salavak's reservations. Together, they began to navigate the challenges of raising a human on an alien world, forging a bond that transcended language and species. Over the next several weeks, Leo became a more integrated part of the Zirian family. They were no longer just a child found in the wilds of Xyrix. They were a part of this world, learning its rhythms, its intricacies, and its wonders. But with each day, the stakes grew higher. Not only was Leo struggling to adapt to an entirely alien society, but the Zirians were now forced to confront a dilemma they had never faced before. How would they continue to protect and raise a human child when their planet's challenges kept escalating? The first true test of Leo's adaptability came when a sudden storm rolled in. Xyrix was no stranger to volatile weather, but this particular storm was unlike anything the Zirians had encountered. Fierce winds, unpredictable lightning strikes, and torrential rain blasted through the normally serene forest. The energy fields that usually protected their home began to flicker and fade under the intensity of the storm. As the winds howled outside, the Zirian family huddled together within their shelter. The air inside the home felt thicker as the power grids began to fail. Veril's usual brightness seemed to dim in response to the tension in the air. Even the normally calm Cleara couldn't hide the worry in her shifting colors. "Something's wrong," Salavak said, his voice a low rumble. He had been monitoring the planetary weather patterns for weeks. "The storm's intensity isn't natural." Cleara's eyes widened with realization. "The Xyrix fields are reacting to it. Something's interfering with the atmospheric balance." They needed to act fast. The storm was becoming more destructive by the minute, and they could feel the instability creeping closer. The alien jungle, which had been so quiet in the past weeks, now seemed more menacing, alive with unseen forces. Something was amiss, and the family had to make a decision: evacuate to the city's underground shelters or brace the storm and keep Leo safe within their home. As they discussed their options, Leo stood at the center of the room, eyes wide with curiosity but also fear. The storm outside had awakened an instinct within the child, the same instinct that had kept them alive on Earth during the crash. Leo's survival had always been a game of adaptability, of using the world around them to overcome whatever dangers came their way. Despite the growing panic among the Zirians, Leo remained unusually calm, watching the others in silence. "Mom," Leo said in broken Zirian, pointing toward the unstable energy grid. "Fix, now?" The Zirians exchanged confused glances. How did the child know? But then it clicked. Leo had been watching everything, studying the tools and technology they used. The child had spent days inspecting the home's power grid, memorizing its weak points, and now, without hesitation, Leo pointed out what needed to be fixed. "Elena," Cleara said, her colors shifting to a determined blue. "They understand. The child understands the problem." Elena took a deep breath, looking at Leo's determined face. She had no time to question how or why Leo had figured it out. They had only moments before the storm reached its peak, and if the power failed entirely, they would be left vulnerable. "Let's do it," Elena said, moving quickly to the main control panel. "We need to override the power relays." Together, they worked quickly, each of the family members using their own knowledge to solve the puzzle. Mira, who had been keeping a close eye on the unstable fields, noted, "If we don't fix this grid, the storm could trigger a planetary-scale resonance. It could destabilize everything." The tension was thick in the air as Cleara and Salavak manipulated the levers and dials, while Leo observed from a distance. The child's eyes flitted back and forth between the adults, silently studying, as though trying to understand the mechanics of this critical moment. Mira, busy working on one of the broken systems, looked at Leo. "What do you think?" she asked, almost as if testing the child. Leo, without hesitation, gestured toward a panel Cleara had missed and said, "There. Open it." Mira and Cleara exchanged a surprised look. Without another word, they followed Leo's direction. The panel slid open, revealing the source of the malfunction. The child had seen it from a different angle, a fresh perspective no one had considered. As they completed the fix, the storm outside began to calm, and the forceful winds finally subsided. The energy grid stabilized, glowing softly as the house's defenses activated again. But the calm didn't last long. The sky outside had turned an eerie shade of violet, signaling that the storm had left a lasting effect on the atmosphere of Xyrix. Leo stood at the window, looking out at the now quiet jungle, watching the first rays of the twin moons light up the wet landscape. In the child's eyes was a new understanding, a knowledge that their world was not just a strange place to survive in but a place to thrive, one that could be shaped, understood, and protected. Cleara knelt beside Leo, her colors flickering with approval. "You saved us," she said softly, her telepathic words filled with pride. "You're no longer just our guest, Leo. You're part of this family, and together we'll learn how to survive." Elena, watching the bond between the child and her family grow stronger, felt a sense of resolve settle over her. They weren't just protecting Leo anymore. Leo had become their guide in navigating this alien world, a small human child who had proven that survival was more than just instinct. It was about connection, understanding, and a willingness to adapt to the world around you. They were no longer just an alien family with a human child. They were a united family, bound by something far more powerful than biology or origin. The days following the storm brought an unsettling calm to the Xyrian family. They had successfully averted a crisis, but the danger was far from over. The unstable weather patterns were only the first sign of the larger issues threatening their safety. The jungle, once a source of wonder and beauty, now felt ominous. The creatures within it seemed to be growing bolder, and the pulse of energy from the ancient tower had only intensified. Commander Elena Voss paced back and forth within their home, her mind churning with uncertainty. The incident with Leo had proven that the child was capable of remarkable adaptability, but even she wasn't sure how long their good fortune could last. Her instincts told her that something even more dangerous was on the horizon. Cleara, sensing Elena's unease, approached with a calm demeanor. "You're worried about the jungle," she said, her voice soft but perceptive. Elena nodded. "Yes, something's wrong. We've seen too many signs of instability. First the storm, now the creatures moving closer. Whatever caused the first seismic event, it's not over." Miritan, who had been observing the planetary weather patterns, spoke up. "The energy levels from the spire are fluctuating at an unprecedented rate. It's almost as if it's reacting to the increased disturbances in the environment." She glanced at the holographic display of the planet's atmosphere. "I think the spire is trying to control the ecosystem, but it's struggling." "Struggling against what?" Rhys Carter asked, his arms crossed as he stared at the display. Myra's brow furrowed. "I don't know. But it's clear that something is disrupting the natural order. The tower is no longer just a passive force. It's becoming an active participant in the planet's instability." Elena's heart sank. "We can't afford to wait and see. We need to figure out what's going on, and fast." But there was another issue on her mind. Since Leo's arrival, the child had shown a remarkable ability to understand the ecosystem. They had connected with the jungle in a way the Xyrians couldn't quite grasp. As much as she hated to admit it, Elena realized that Leo might hold the key to understanding the planet's escalating instability. "Leo!" Elena called, her voice warm. The child appeared at the entrance of the room, their small forms silhouetted against the soft light from the glowing plants. The moment Leo's eyes met hers, Elena could see a familiar spark, curiosity, intelligence, and a quiet resolve. "I need your help," Elena continued. "Can you show us what you know about the jungle? You seem to understand it in a way we don't." Leo stepped forward, their hand hesitantly reaching out toward the table, where a map of the jungle's major landmarks was displayed. Cleara knelt beside the child, her eyes watching intently. "What do you see, Leo?" Cleara asked, her voice filled with gentle encouragement. Leo pointed toward the map, tracing a line between several points on the map. Then, they touched the glowing section near the tower and made a series of hand gestures that Elena recognized from their previous attempts at communication. It was almost as if the child was trying to tell them something about the interconnectedness of the tower and the surrounding jungle. Mira examined the map with renewed interest. "This could be the key," she muttered. "Leo's pointing to areas where the energy flow from the spire converges. The jungle's pulses might be in sync with the tower's fluctuations. They're tied together." Reese raised an eyebrow. "So, the spire is feeding into the jungle? Or vice versa?" "It's a feedback loop," Mira replied, her voice growing more certain. "The tower might be sending signals to the ecosystem, trying to maintain balance. But if it's being overloaded, it's destabilizing the entire system." Elena took a deep breath. "How do we stop it?" Cleara considered this. "We need to isolate the source of the disturbance. If the tower is malfunctioning, it could be a malfunctioning energy conduit, or perhaps something is interfering with its systems. But we can't do it alone. We'll need Leo." Leo stepped forward, seemingly understanding the importance of the moment. Without hesitation, the child took the lead, guiding the group toward the jungle, their small form navigating the twisting paths with a surprising level of confidence. It was as though they could hear the jungle's pulse, feel its rhythm. As they moved deeper into the jungle, the atmosphere grew denser, the trees towering over them like ancient sentinels. The ground was soft, almost marshy, as if the ecosystem was alive and shifting beneath their feet. The Xyrians had learned to adapt to the jungle's natural rhythm, but now they were following Leo, trusting in the child's connection to this alien world. The further they ventured, the more they noticed how the plants and trees seemed to react to their presence. Vines curled back, as if making way for them, while the bioluminescent flowers bloomed in time with the group's movements. It was both beautiful and eerie, like they were walking through the heartbeat of the planet itself. Finally, they arrived at a clearing near the spire's base, and the true scale of the tower became apparent. The structure was far larger than they had realized, its surface covered in intricate, shifting patterns that pulsed with the same rhythm they had observed in the jungle. Leo stepped forward, kneeling before the tower and placing their hand on the surface. A moment of stillness passed, and then a soft hum filled the air. The glowing lines on the tower flared briefly, responding to the child's touch. The jungle seemed to quiet around them, as if holding its breath. "It's responding to Leo," Cleara said, her voice full of wonder. The child slowly stood up and turned toward the group, their expression serious. "Fix it," Leo said in a quiet, broken sentence. Mira nodded, realizing the enormity of what lay ahead. "We'll fix it," she promised. But it was clear that the task before them was far greater than any of them had anticipated. The air around the spire was thick with anticipation. The moment Leo touched the tower, the jungle had shifted, its pulsating energy drawing everything into a temporary stillness. But the challenge was far from over. The spire had responded, yes, but it hadn't given them the answers they needed. It was as if the tower itself was waiting, unsure of whether to trust the humans and their small, enigmatic ally. The group stood together in silence, the hum of the spire and the faint rustle of the jungle the only sounds filling the space. Elena glanced at the others, their faces a mix of curiosity and concern. Mira was hunched over her scanner, tracing the patterns on the device's display, while Cleara and Solovac studied Leo, trying to read the child's expressions. "We're on the edge of something monumental," Elena said, her voice barely above a whisper. "But we don't have much time before the tower's energy destabilizes the entire ecosystem." Reese, ever the pragmatist, crossed his arms. "How do we fix this? We don't know enough about the technology or how it interacts with the jungle. Leo's the only one who can communicate with it." Leo's wide eyes flicked back toward the tower. The child seemed deeply focused, almost meditative, as if trying to comprehend the magnitude of the task before them. Finally, Leo spoke, though their voice was soft, fragile. It needs more. Myra's eyes widened. More? She asked, scanning the child's words with her translator. What does it need, Leo? The child pointed to the base of the spire, tracing one of the glowing lines with their fingers, the way they had seen the Xyrians do when examining the tower. It was an intricate design, lines and symbols that shifted and flowed, connecting like veins in a living organism. More connection. Cleara knelt beside Leo, her thoughts racing. It's not enough to fix the disruption. We need to forge a deeper bond, something that allows us to synchronize with the tower. Elena's gaze shifted to the jungle around them. She could feel it now, the pulse of the forest, resonating with the same energy as the tower. It wasn't just an ecosystem. It was alive. And it wasn't malfunctioning, it was searching, reaching for something. We need to become part of the system, Elena said, her voice filled with realization. The tower, the jungle, everything is connected. If we don't connect, this world will collapse. And so will we. Solovac's colors shifted uneasily. A synchronization, that's dangerous. It's not like anything we've experienced. It's the only option, Elena replied. It's the only way to stabilize the energy before it all unravels. They all turned their attention back to Leo, who stood up and walked closer to the base of the spire, their small hand gently brushing against the surface. The energy in the air seemed to intensify, responding to the touch. For a moment, nothing happened, and then, suddenly, the entire tower flared to life, its surface rippling as though a new layer of consciousness was awakening. Cleara stepped forward. We have to connect with it directly. We can't just observe. We need to merge with it. Mira hesitated but then nodded, accepting the gravity of the task ahead. She adjusted the interface she had brought from their ship and connected it to the tower's base. The moment the device activated, the tower's hum shifted, becoming a deep vibration that echoed through the ground beneath them. A pulse of energy surged upward, enveloping their group, and the landscape around them shimmered as if it were bending in response. Leo turned to the group, their face glowing with determination. Now. Elena took a deep breath and stepped forward, placing her palm against the spire's surface. The moment her skin made contact, a flash of brilliant light enveloped her entire being. The others followed suit, one by one, their hands joining the child's as the energy surged through them. For a brief moment, they became one with the tower, with the jungle, with the planet itself. The sensation was overwhelming, a rush of visions, sounds, and feelings that flooded their minds. They saw the history of Xyrix, a world that had once been vibrant and full of life, now struggling under the weight of cosmic interference. They felt the frustration of the tower, which had been designed not only to maintain balance but to prevent an ecological collapse. They understood the ancient technology, its origins, and its purpose. And they realized that, in order to save Xyrix, they had to merge their own systems with the planet's, a complete synchronization of humanity, Xyrian, and the living world. As the last wave of energy surged through them, the connection was complete. The sky overhead cleared, the dark storm clouds dissipating as the jungle's energy stabilized. The tower's hum softened, becoming a harmonious pulse, a signal of balance restored. Elena withdrew her hand, her heart still racing, but with a sense of relief she couldn't fully explain. We did it, she said softly, her eyes wide with the realization of what they had just accomplished. Mira, still adjusting to the sensations, nodded slowly. It's incredible. The spire is no longer just a structure. It's a living part of this ecosystem, and now, it's part of us. The creatures in the jungle that had once been hostile now approached cautiously, their behavior no longer aggressive but curious. They seemed to sense the change, as if understanding that the balance had been restored. Cleara looked at Leo, her face glowing with pride. You've saved Xyrix, child. Without you, none of this would have been possible. Leo smiled, their small forms still lit by the glow of the tower. They had done it. They had bridged the gap between species, between the jungle, the tower, and the humans. Xyrix was now a world of balance, a world of connection, and humanity's role within it was only just beginning. As the group stood there, gazing out at the vibrant world before them, they knew one thing for certain: they had not just discovered an alien planet. They had found a new home, one where humanity could learn, grow, and thrive, as part of something far greater than they could have ever imagined.